In recent days, Sayadaw has explained how, due to the object, mentality, nama, results. How, due to nama, mentality, rupa, results, physicality results. And how, due to nama, mentality, mentality results. Sayadaw has explained this in terms of theory and practice. Today, Sayadaw will explain how rupa, physicality, causes nama, mentality, in both theory and practice. In the example of how physicality causes mentality, how rupa causes nama, this is very evident at the moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. And it's undeniable that physicality causes mentality in these experiences. So let's say we see something. This seeing consciousness, knowing the visible object, occurs due to a cause. It doesn't occur without a cause. If there's no eye, or if our eye is not good, or if the eye is completely blind, well, according to the capability of our eye, the seeing will be good. The seeing will vary depending on how completely the physical eye is capable. And when our eyes are very weak, then the seeing will be poor, and we'll need to use glasses or a magnifying glass to increase our ability to see. This is very evident. And let's say we have good eyes, but there's no visible object, or there's no light where we are. Both of these things must be present. The eye must be capable of seeing, and there must be a visible object. These two combine, and seeing consciousness, together with its companion mind states of contact and feeling. A few days ago, Sayadaw mentioned that in the moment of seeing, there are the three elements called the base or receptor element, the striker, and the spark. And he talked about the experience of seeing with these three elements involved in a general way. This receptor element, or the base, is an element which can receive the object. The word element is used as a translation of the Pali word dhatu. Dhatu means something that has its own individual nature, its own unique nature, or sabhava. So the eye base, the nature of the eye base is that it is capable of receiving light and color, and thus it's called dhatu. It's an element, the receptor element or the base element. And in seeing, it's called the eye base. So color and form strike the eye. They don't strike the tongue or ear and so on. They strike the eye. The eye base is called dhatu. And the striker, the visible object, strikes the base. The striker is various types of forms or colors. And this also is an element, something with its own individual nature, or dhatu. And in English we call it the striker. When it strikes the base, then there's a spark, which is seeing consciousness. There's knowing of the visible object. And when consciousness arises, there's the quality also of the meeting between the object and consciousness at the eye base. When this meeting is of a good sort, then there's a good feeling, pleasant feeling. And when it's not a good contact or meeting, then it's a bad feeling arises. And if it's neither good nor bad, then a neutral feeling will arise. So these three are the spark element that arises at the moment of seeing: consciousness, contact, and feeling. And each of these has its own individual nature. So each of these can also be called dhatu, or element. In the moment of seeing, these three parts of nama are evident. So if we look at all the elements involved in seeing, there's the receptor element, the eye base, which is a cause for seeing to occur. There's the striker element, which is the form, which also is a cause for the seeing to occur. These two are physical. And the result is the mental spark made up of seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling. Someone who is capable of reflecting or reading or speaking, for anyone who can understand words, this is easy to understand. If one just uses ordinary reflection to think about these elements of the base, the striker, and the spark, one can see that they have their own true nature, and that there's nothing more than simple elements coming together. The eye has the nature to receive the object, and to the extent that there is something visible, it can receive that. So the eye is a cause for seeing to arise, and if that eye is incapable of seeing, if the eye is blind, then there's no Superman that can make somebody see. And if the visible object is not evident, if the visible object is hidden by darkness, then also one won't see. But if the visible object strikes the eye, when the arrow of manasikara, or this, steers the mind to the eye, then one will see. And one won't not see when these conditions come together, with the visible object striking the eye and the mind paying attention through the steering of manasikara, attention, then seeing will occur. And no person with superpowers can prevent seeing from happening when the causes for it to happen are all there. When the causes are all there, then seeing will occur. So the causes for seeing to arise are the eye base, capable of seeing, and the visible object with the help of light, and manasikara, attention, the mental factor that steers the mind to an object. If these causes are not complete, no great Brahma, no supreme being can make seeing happen. And it's easy to see that in the seeing process, there are just elements that come together. So one has to understand this point in theory. And understanding it from a theoretical point is called suttamaya. It means that something that we know through hearing about it. And if we elaborate or reflect on something that we've heard, this suttamaya, then that is also another type of knowledge, which is chintamaya. It's reflective knowledge. Neither suttamaya and chintamaya, neither of these ways of knowing can see true nature or sabhava. These types of knowing can only see the shadow of what is really there. To see sabhava, that which is really there, one has to note and observe the object at the very moment that it happens. Sayadaw said that when these three elements combine, seeing is the word for the phenomena that happens, the experience. If we analyze it, in essence, there are just these three things: the receptor element, the striker element, and the spark. The eye, the visible object, and the seeing consciousness. But when we observe in the moment of seeing, we can't look at the individual parts. We need to just observe it as seeing. So it's like when we eat food. If we are eating a bite of food, it could have any one of 6 different types of tastes. It could be sweet or sour, bitter, bland, salty, or I forget what the other is. But it has some sort of taste. But what we do is we chew the food. We don't sort out the individual taste. We just chew. And when we chew, the taste comes out on its own. The taste becomes evident. So we have to just chew the food, and as we do so, there may be something bitter that we taste. The bitter taste becomes apparent, or something sweet, or something sour, or maybe a combination of sweet and sour. So one can't just note the individual taste directly. One has to just chew, and as one does so, the taste becomes evident. So it's like this when we observe seeing. So one observes the seeing process as a whole thing. But when one does, when one notes seeing, when one observes a lot, and when the effort, mindfulness, and concentration are strong, then we know one of the 3 elements of the process of seeing. If the mind falls on the receptor element of the eye, then what we'll know is the eye base. If the mind falls on the visible object, the striker, then what the mind will know is the striker. If the mind falls on the consciousness or contact or feeling, the spark, then the mind will know that mental spark. In one moment, it's not possible to know all parts of the seeing process. We'll only know one thing at a time. So that's why we note this as a whole, seeing. In the moment of seeing, we know that there are 3 elements coming together. But if we do not have ardent effort at the moment of seeing, and if therefore there's no sati, no mindfulness. And the collectedness of mind disperses. What's important is for kilesas not to arise, especially when a man sees a woman or a woman sees a man. There's a tendency for lust to occur. So whatever it happens to be, whatever the object happens to be, whether it's a person or whether it's something else visible that might be attractive, if one is not mindful at the moment of seeing, then raga, lust, will occur. So one has to have ardent effort at the moment of seeing. If there's ardent effort, then laziness will not enter the mind. So every second we need to apply ardent effort again and again. And in order not to miss the object, we need to have accurate aim. So these two things are needed. The effort to push the mind to the object so it reaches the object, and accurate aim. With those two, sati will stick to the object. There won't be any laziness because of ardent effort. And because of the accurate aim, the mind will be fresh. It will blossom. And later, sati arises and becomes strong. And due to the sati, mindfulness, the mind will be protected from kilesas. It will be guarded. And then the mind will fall collectedly on the object. There won't be any movement of the mind due to raga, lust, or due to anger, dosa. So one has to, first of all, make the mind collected. This is important. Doing so, making the mind collected, will lead to our coming to know true nature. So, in the moment of seeing, there's the base, the striker, and the spark. And it's important that kilesas not occur in the moment of seeing. So we should have an attitude of being determined to prevent the kilesas by observing the process of seeing. And with this determination, eventually one will come to know the elements of the base, the striker, and the spark very clearly. When one has noted seeing again and again and again, when one has noted many times, sometimes one is aware of the eye base. The mind comes in contact with the eye base, and one is aware of how the eye is a receptor for the visible object. One knows that quality of the eye, that it receives the object. So when the visible object strikes the eye and seeing consciousness arises, one is aware of how this happens at the eye base. And one knows how the eye is capable of receiving the object. That there's this, when the visible object strikes the eye, the mind is also there. There is seeing consciousness. So the eye is the place where these things take place, where the visible object strikes, and it's the place where the seeing consciousness arises. So if one knows in any of these ways, what one is knowing is the eye base at the moment of seeing. And sometimes one is aware of what is striking the eye. Like when we go in front of a mirror and an image appears. In seeing, the image appears on the eye. So sometimes when we observe the moment of seeing, what we're aware of is what is seen. We're aware of the visible form. Oh, this is what is seen. Or we're aware that we know that this is the object of the seeing consciousness. And the word in Burmese means that just like a cow grazes in a pasture, so the cow has its pasture where it grazes, and the visible object is like the pasture for seeing consciousness. Seeing consciousness grazes on this object the way a cow grazes in a pasture. So if one knows in any one of these ways, then what one is knowing in the moment of seeing is the striker element. And sometimes the observing mind, the noting mind, is aware of seeing consciousness at the moment of seeing. One is aware that seeing consciousness is what sees the form that is striking the base. Seeing consciousness has the nature to know the visible object. And this is the natural characteristic or sabhava lakkhana of seeing consciousness. That's all that the seeing consciousness knows. It only knows form and color. It doesn't know this is nama, that's rupa. It doesn't know anything like that. It just knows the form. And also sometimes what we are aware of is that the seeing consciousness has connected with the object. So sometimes what we know in the moment of seeing is the seeing consciousness. And sometimes what we're aware of in seeing is the contact. The striker, the visible object, and the spark, the mental factors of seeing consciousness, contact and hearing, or seeing consciousness, are meeting, contacting each other at the eye base. This meeting of the object and the mind, those two come together on the eye base. So this quality of these two elements coming together, contacting each other, is called phassa in Pali, or contact in English. And this is part of this is a mental quality that is part of the spark that occurs in seeing. And sometimes what we'll be aware of in seeing is it's good to see, it's pleasant to see, or it's bad to see. We'll be aware of this quality of feeling concerning the object. So these three things, the seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling, are all parts of the spark that occurs when seeing happens. So there's the base and the striker, the eye base and visible object. These are physical. And then there's seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling. These are mental or nama. The cause is the base and the striker. And the result is the seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling that is the spark. So in this case, it's a physical cause that gives rise to a mental result. And yogis who note respectfully and carefully can come to see this in a few days. This is how rupa, or physical, causes nama, or mentality. So therefore, when seeing a member of the opposite sex or seeing some other visible object that one finds attractive, if there's no observation, as the yogis are observing now, if there's no ardent effort to observe the object, and therefore no mindfulness, no sati, and therefore the mind becomes dispersed, then one will think, this is beautiful, and there will be wanting. There will be wanting for that object. Or if it's something that's unattractive, then that will lead to anger, dislike and anger. And the quality of delusion, not knowing things the way they are, is always present when akusala arises. This is how kilesas arise. So whether it's a man seeing a woman seeing a woman, or some other beautiful object that one is seeing, it's important not to let lust into the mind. And therefore one has to note seeing at the very moment that it happens. When one does this, noting at the very moment that seeing happens, the mind will stop with just seeing, with mere seeing. And it won't go to evaluating the object as beautiful, thinking about it, and then feeling lust. So one should understand that this is the nature of the mind. So when the clean, wholesome mind occurs repeatedly, then any one of the three elements that are involved in the moment of seeing will naturally become apparent. One doesn't have to try to make them become apparent. When the clean mind occurs again and again, then the knowledge of mental and physical phenomena, the clear distinction between the two, and the knowledge of how they are related as cause and effect, will naturally come to be. And then in the moment of seeing, one will see that the cause for seeing is the eye and the form. The result is the consciousness, seeing consciousness, contact and feeling. These occur due to the consciousness. Seeing doesn't occur due to a creator. It has its own cause. So when one observes phenomena that are cause and effect, that are related as cause and effect, when they happen, one can see clearly their relationship as cause and effect. Therefore, the Buddha said to note seeing as soon as it occurs. So Sayadaw said that this will be all for today, and tomorrow Sayadaw will speak about another way that rupa, the physical, causes nama, the mental, and he urges the yogis to please work respectfully and carefully. That's all for today.